Welcome to Still Talking Uncut. I'm your favorite host in the whole wide world, Big Easy, joined by the co-host, Uncle Joey. Uh, the other co-host couldn't make it tonight, and I think they're off spooning in Matt's deer blind or something. I'm not sure, but they're not going to be here tonight. We welcome back for the second time guest of the night, my man Alan Bishop. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, man. The only guest you'll ever have on that gets worse each time he comes on.
I don't know. Sean gets worse each time he comes on.
Yeah. That's why he's not on here. He's digging for them gaskets for Tyler.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, Sean, send Tyler's fucking gaskets and track lamps, dude.
You piece of shit.
Or tap me in. Tap me in and be like, hey, man, take care of that for me. I'll make sure he gets them.
That'll make Tyler's day.
Hey, there he is.
I might send him to him with Sean's return address on him, just so he thinks they came from him.
You write a master distiller on there, and Tyler will know who it's from. I'm gonna share this stream real quick. There we go. That's out there. All right, cool, good deal. Oh yeah,
awesome. We appreciate you having you. So it's been a while. I believe you were one of our first guests.
I think so.
It was a while ago. So always.
Been a couple years. You guys been going at it for a little while now, for sure.
Yeah, we have. We have. So pleasure to have you back. Lots changed for you since last time. You went from Spirits to French Lick to, fill us in.
Yeah, man. I good people right down the road from Spirits of French Lick. They own a little winery too called Patoka Lake Winery. They own a marina and a gas station. Really, if it's there at the main gates of the lake, they own everything pretty much there. So, which is cool. So, it's an all encompassing experience. I like to say it's not a distillery with a destination. It's a destination with a distillery, right? So if you got a family, you can come there and do all kinds of family stuff, but also, right, there's a brewery and a winery and a distillery now. Plus we got a hotel, we got floating cabins, we got land cabins, pretty much anything you might want to do in the summertime. And it is the second largest reservoir in the state of Indiana. Lake Monroe is a little bigger, but the cool thing about Patoka Lake is that you can't actually have a house on Patoka Lake. So everything is set back. It's real nice, relaxed out in the middle of nowhere in Crawford County. There's only about 10,000 people in Crawford County total. So it draws a huge, what I like to call the Kid Rock crowd, right? Everybody from either camping in the tents or they've got damn speedboats. As a matter of fact, there's 2 yachts setting on the lake. I don't know who buys a yacht and puts it on a damn lake in Indiana, but somebody did. So, but the idea of it is, sort of playing off of the history of the Black Forest of Southern Indiana. Every family had an old homestead, right? And most old homesteads were agriculturally centric. Distilling's agriculturally centric, and this distillery is very much so. What does it look like when a home distiller scales up to something that looks like commercial scale, on the smaller side of commercial scale, obviously, but everything we're doing there is, I like to say it's pushing boundaries while respecting traditions is what we're doing, but it's very much based in my home distilling, my home alchemy experiments over the years, and the knowledge of everything I learned, in the past 11 years in the legal industry, plus everything I've learned since I was a kid, etc. It's all kind of put together, and there's really no rules, no boundaries, no limitations. We have a really cool setup with three large pot stills, a 250 with a double thumper system, a 250 with an offset gin basket, offset column, but we can bypass both of those as well. 500-gallon stripping still, little 17-gallon Dr. Gratis I can set up various different ways. My camera's going to freeze up now for whatever reason. I apologize.
You're all right. It'll bounce back.
Yeah, it's all good. But we're really trying to trying to do something a little different, right? Distilleries are going through a hard time right now, especially bourbon distilleries. But I think I think the small distilleries that are associated in particular with tourist attractions, I think they're going to do well as long as they have good, high quality product. People have laid off drinking a little bit, especially the new generation of young drinkers have laid off a little bit, but they're still drinking. They're just, they're basically drinking more experientially at this point. So that thing just ain't going to unfreeze. But anyways, they're willing to pay a higher dollar less times a year for something that is a little bit more involved, right? Not just a story, not just a quality product, but actually experiential, just in general. I look like I'm having a damn stroke in that frozen video frame, guys. It's crazy. But I'll kill it for a minute. We'll turn it back on in a minute, see what we get. I'm sure my Wi-Fi is maxed out. My daughter's still awake, so I'm sure she's in there watching YouTube videos or something. But
I feel that.
yeah,
My boys are playing video games,
yeah.
So just to comment on what you're saying there, you like that would be like close to me would be like a Buffalo Trace, and and they make a solid product. There's only a couple of their bottles that I can really say that I truly enjoy, but that whole experience, if you enjoy bourbon, everybody, that's one of the main ones everybody enjoys. That's a really cool experience. So I see what you're saying. That's going to still draw people. What they have there is people are still going to go there. Another one that I really enjoy, the Wild Turkey. What they have down there with Wild Turkey is a really cool thing. It's not the distillery. It's more just like a welcome center, but it's a really cool experience. It's outdoor. It's indoor. The bar, the gift shop. There might even be a restaurant there. I'm not 100% sure, but those places, I agree, those will still draw your people.
Yeah, and on the small side, it's really, I think, the small distilleries that can sort of right now, if you're one of those mid-sized distilleries, that's like you're waiting on the death blow. A lot of them are. Only a few of them are going to make it through that, truthfully, and they're the ones that have sort of established themselves, especially if you're in bourbon or something of that nature. But the ones that can be tied to any kind of little excursion thing where people can, either come by for food or they can go for a hike or, tied to whatever your local tourist attraction is. And then experiential drinks in terms of like, for example, we're doing a lot of what we call Sunshine, which is a tribute to my brother, Mike Stallings, Moonshine Mike Stallings, who passed away a couple years ago. And the idea behind that is that, it's sunshine because we're making it with sunflowers, but also because it ain't moonshine because we're not making it illegally. We're not making it under the light of moon. We're making it under the light of the sun. But how do you take moonshine, which, I have my roots are in moonshine. That's where my family comes from, but I've never leaned into it legally. So how do you take moonshine and sort of, I'm not going to say improve it, but how do you sort of make it a little bit more, I guess, intriguing in certain ways, right? You guys have done a lot of infusions and jars and all that kind of stuff, right? So the sky's kind of the limit. But then the next step in that is, how many of those ingredients can you grow yourself, make yourself, modify yourself? Those things, I think people like to see that stuff. And the Sunshine program, even though it only runs on the 250-gallon double thumper system, Tyler will tell you guys that's one full-time job just running the Sunshine stuff. Malting the sunflowers, malting corn, roasting the sunflowers, smoking oats, doing all that stuff that I think is going to be important for people to see, and mashing it into wooden barrels with an actual mash rake and all that stuff. Throwing all kinds of weird stuff into the thumpers. Purposefully, I'm not just throwing weird stuff in to throw weird stuff in, very purposefully and with intent throwing things into the thumpers that Tyler gets to try to pump back out of there the next day.
Yeah.
So, but it's a cool experience. We'll have a little bit of everything for everybody. So we'll have the Sunshine stuff, which will be there's an actual white Sunshine. There's what we call Newton Stewart, which is more of a traditional corn-based Sunshine, but that's based off of Elise corn that I bred myself, and then we do some malting with that we do ourselves. We have what we call Wycliffe Bell, which is an Irish peat smoked oat-based Sunshine. We'll have basically apple spirits and peach spirits. Eventually, we'll have apple brandy and peach brandy as well down the line. We'll have bourbons. We've got all the flavored stuff. The only real rule that I set out was, if I was going to do the flavored stuff, which I've never done liqueurs and cordials until now legally, the only rule was on the really super sweet stuff. If it's not a flavor that you could find as a sort of hard candy or a rock candy in a 1900s apothecary, we probably won't make it. But other than that, it's a late crowd, and the super sweet stuff is going to fund all the weird stuff and the cool stuff that's more involved that I want to do. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, turned a complete 180 on what I was doing at French Lick. So, and we're still going to be doing whiskeys too, obviously.
How do you deal with the sunflower oils and now, or does it not present an issue because you're running on a double thumper system?
Oh, the cool thing is that double thumper actually, I'm not even going to try to unfreeze anymore. Sorry. Anyways, that double thumper system. So people, if you really play around with those double thumpers and you start to understand what they do and how they can work, that thing can be one of two things. It can actually be an oil extraction machine, which is awesome. It really works not dissimilarly, as you guys know, if you run double thumpers like this before. The theory and the practice behind them is actually not that different from what an actual 3-chamber still is. But it's all about where you put your tails in the distillation versus where you put mash. Are the tails going into the thumpers? Or are they going into the still itself? And with the sunflowers, they're oily, but that's part of why we use them, because that oil actually gets a little bit of a rancio characteristic to it, which is something they really look for in cognac and Armagnac and things of that nature. One thing that we do is, all of the Sunshines are sugar maple charcoal filtered. In true home distiller fashion, I had a little 15-gallon conical fermenter that my buddy Kent Mace sent me years ago, and didn't really have a use for it other than to hold spirits here at the house back when I was doing stuff here, which I haven't done in quite a while now. But I took that thing to work, and I thought, man, I can make a filter out of this. So I take sugar maple charcoal and we break it up to about inch size or so. We pack that thing full of sugar maple charcoal, put a little 90-degree elbow on the bottom of it to 1.5 inches. It goes to a sight glass. We put one of those gasketed screens in the bottom of it and fill the sight glass up with unbleached coffee filters, and bam, there you go. Homemade little filter ready to go. Just take it off the still, go over to the filter, pour it through there, pull the excess off, and into the tank she goes, man.
Oh, yeah.
So Daniel, your question about how would that help with the oils and an oily grain like Jimmy Red, I would think it would, act the same depending upon how you used it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, charcoal will clean that up a little bit. And the goal is, with the Sunshine, not necessarily to clean it up. It's just to kind of keep it a little contained, a little more linear, right? So if I'm going to take that Sunshine, for example, instead and go into a barrel, which we're going to do some of here shortly, probably not going to sugar maple charcoal filter that. I want all those oils in there. I want to hold on to as much of that as I can. Right. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking to eliminate some oils, if you're after some white spirit and you're wanting it really clean, varietal selection and understanding exactly where you're placing what in your thumper system will help you out a lot. So, but we're doing some other cool cordials too. So we're doing we've got a thing we call the 9-herb charm, which is based on an old English poem about Woden, which is Odin and the 9 sacred herbs, and it's sort of a replacement for chartreuse. We've got some peach liqueur that we made out of some of the peach Sunshine that we distilled over the summertime. That's a little less sweet. We only take that maybe to around 30 bricks or so. So it's much more like the old, what they used to label peach brandies in the 1800s that were cordials. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of neat stuff. 3 different absinthes. There we'll actually have a sort of an absinthe experience where you can take kind of an absinthe centered tour. Eventually there'll be a little absinthe garden, and there's actually a corner in the tasting room. It's decorated just like everything else, but it'll have black lights, and it'll be just an absinthe experience. You can come in, I'll tell you about the history of absinthe and taste you through 3 different ones so that you really get some idea of what absinthe truly is.
I'll bring Uncle Joey and he can chase the ferry.
Well, listen, Here's the thing about absinthe. I'm not afraid of it, but I really don't like it. So,
yep.
Fair enough. I'd like to know the history, but I'll probably toss the shots over the shoulder.
It's an acquired taste for sure,
yes,
without a doubt. But it does have a very, very cool history, and and again, we'll have something for everybody. So I mentioned the whiskeys a little bit earlier. I'll touch on them real quick too. So just to give you guys a little idea of what will be coming. So we'll probably do some barrels of bourbon here and there, but instead of trying to make that our main thing, because obviously bourbon is a very crowded space, I have basically kicked all of my mash bills, short of, you know, rye whiskey or wheat whiskey, things like that, over to being American whiskey, which is a pretty cool category that you can play around with a lot more than what you can with bourbon, and a little wider levity with doing things. But one of the really neat things that we're doing with these whiskeys in particular, other than the unique mash bills, the fact that we capture our own yeast and propagate our own yeast and use a lot of alternative things, is that we've set everything up to where we can make 3 different versions of any whiskey, based on distillation alone, but also other factors. So we take whatever mash bill, we ferment it. Maybe we'll switch out the yeast. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll run them the same. We can do double pot still, which all gets fermented in open top 500-gallon fermenters, or we can do, and from there it can go 1 of 2 paths. It can go either stripping still to 250-gallon doubling still, or it can go to 250-gallon doubling still with a column and run, say, 4 plates and hold it at like 125, 130 proof, maybe 140 if we want to push it, but I'll probably go a little lower there. Or we can go into our wooden casks and then go into the 250-gallon double thumper system. I also have some inline thumpers from Wayne Herbert. And of course, I got one of those Rick Gibson mason jar Tennessee thumpers that I've changed up a little bit and thrown some.
Is that the one? That's the one, right? That's the
one.
That's the Rick Gibson one, right?
That's right. That's the bastardized Rick Gibson one there.
It is.
Sure. So, I can do a lot of variations. The neat thing about that is I can mark those mash bills. Although they're the same product, I can mark them on the barrels. So when we get down the line, we've actually got some matured product on hand. People come in and they want to pick single barrels. Well, now not only is every barrel different just because the barrel, the day, etc., but now you can actually look at 3 different profiles of that same mash bill. Or we may even take those and, blend them together in different proportions when we actually get ready to bottle. But it gives us a lot more room to sort of navigate. And right now with those American whiskeys, the cool thing is, American whiskey doesn't have the proof ceiling on barreling that bourbon has. So bourbon has to go in no higher than 125. Now we're still distilling under 160 proof. Our average on our hearts is about 140. But the really cool thing is, for example, on the double pot still stuff, I'm literally rolling the barrel up underneath the collection port on the still and going directly into the barrel.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Very Armagnac sort of style. And, I'll just tell you, if I mess up, you're going to know I messed up when you taste it. There ain't going to be no hiding it.
Right.
That's efficiency.
Yeah.
That's efficiency. That's less steps. That's me all day. Like, I like that.
That sounds like some Sean shit right there.
You know what? When I go to fill a barrel, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to slide it right underneath of it, and what you get's what you get. I like that.
Man, y'all would you'd love the distillery as it is right now, because like I said, it's sort of a scaled up home distillery, in terms of what we're doing, but all the way down to the extent, this is a small company, so you're figuring out things as you go. And we started producing in July on the 250 we call Artemisia, which is a double thumper system. I didn't have a concrete apron coming in the garage door. There's great big giant gravel out there. We're still producing right now, literally running off of water hoses on everything at the moment, because we're waiting on a glycol chiller to come in. So it's it's treacherous, but it's just like at home.
Yeah.
So
hey, I love places like that. I love when you go in and it's just like something you'd run at home. Like, oh man, I'd do that. Like, I'd slap that together. That's how I'd run that.
Yeah.
So
that's sort of part of the purpose of this too, is, we're planning on doing classes. We want to get people in there.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And really teach people in depth, from, simple sugar shines, which honestly, that's exactly what the sunshines are. They are sugar shines. They're just modified various different ways with different things that we do ourselves. And then all the way up to all grain and brandy, or bring in, guests. I know we've talked about having Jesse from Still It come up maybe this fall. And, the cool thing is you can come there. If you just come in to visit, you can come up there, you can get plastered. Your hotel room's right there. You ain't got to go far, right?
You can't beat that.
Yeah. And then the hotel lobby is going to be part of, or what we call the common area. It's part of this new, what they call the DORA law, which means that, let's say you were over at the winery and you got a glass of wine, You walk in the door of the distillery, well, not the distillery, but the hotel common area. You can drink that wine right there in the hotel common area with your buddy that's at the distillery and got a drink from the distillery, and your buddy from the brewery, it's got him a beer over there. So, it's a cool little hangout for sure. 26 room hotel, contactless check-in, really good rates, beautiful lake, actually some of the cleanest water, not only in Indiana, but in the United States. I mean, it's a pretty ideal situation for being able to make good spirits and bring people in and teach them and hang out with them and, do the whole thing. We got a big walk-in humidor. If cigars are your thing, we got a VIP area we're finishing up right now where you'll be able to do sort of a subscription thing where you can actually go up to this VIP area and smoke cigars and hang out and drink and do the whole thing.
You already know we got to make a trip over, Uncle Joe.
I was just going to say, but
it ain't that
you
far.
had me about 4 explanations ago. I was like, yeah,
well, we call it AA. So that's alcohol acres. That's
nice.
that's what it's called. And, I highly suggest that, about once every quarter, you just come spend a weekend is what you got to do. Just a little reset. Just a little reset.
What exactly is the name of this place? What's how can we find this?
Yeah, so it's Old Homestead Distillery. You can find us at oldhomesteaddc.com is where we're at. And
there you go.
Yeah. The other thing that you guys will like too. So I've done a lot of work with a lot of our similar friends that do copper work and all that stuff. So I got that Rick Gibson sitting in there. I got that Dr. Gratis. A lot of the things that people have seen on the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute channel. That equipment's there now and it's being used practically on a decent scale, but I've also got a 13 stills, 82 gallon thumper on Artemisia. I've got a Cold Springs Copper Works 40 gallon, used to be one of my home stills. It's my second thumper over there. I've got Wayne from Ozark Stillworks building me all kinds of craziness. He built me a damn steam whistle because we are the, largest all-electric distillery in the United States that I know of, but it's electric into jackets that we run off of water. And man, I can open that whistle up. It sounds like a train rolling through that distillery. So he's built me a Donna jug and Whiskey Thieves that got brass knuckles on them. I mean, all the dorky stuff that you gotta kind of want to have, So it's a good advertisement for all of our buddies.
Absolutely.
So I'm all blast.
Yeah,
I'm all about a good time. So let us know when she gets open. And I got buddies from down south. They're like, "Oh, we got to come up." Like,
yeah. Well, hotel is open now. Distillery soft opens in April. As of right now, to the best of my knowledge, April 1st is sort of the soft opening date. And no, that's not a joke. I know it's April Fool's Day. Ironically, I left the last distillery last April Fool's Day, so it worked out perfect. But I don't know when the grand opening will be, but we will be open for business in April. That's our, we start up our busy season, heading that direction. People coming back with their boats and everything, and it's a good time. There's always a party to be found over there somewhere.
We'll have to make it up this summer. Enjoy the lake.
Yeah,
that sounds like a good time.
Yeah, man, they got party boats. You can rent party boats. We do all that stuff. There's a beach down there. Whatever you want to do, man. There's plenty of things to get yourself in trouble. And the cool thing is it's right in. So the lake itself is on Indiana DNR property, and then that sits within the Hoosier National Forestry. So it's just a absolutely gorgeous area, highly protected. Just a really, really neat place. So.
Yeah, look forward to that. We'll drag Sean along.
Yeah, bring him along.
Make him come. So
sounds like a cool place. You definitely need to check it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd like to see the Rick Gibson jar rig.
The one that I threw. Yep. It's a thing. I never said I was a good still builder, but
hey, as long as it makes liquor, man, it's all that matters. As long as it makes liquor and it don't kill you, that's 100% success in my mind.
Oh, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. That another thing you guys probably appreciate too. The a lot of distilleries spend a lot of time talking about how much money they've spent on their stills and this and that and the other. And I'll be completely honest and open with everybody. Those 3 big stills come out of China and sewed that cooker. And we spent we spent less on that than most places spend on a single still.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just as happy with them as anything. I've run Vendomes, I've run Forsyths, and I've run keg stills. And to be quite honest with you, I love Vendomes and I love Forsyths, but I can make just as good a spirit on a keg as I can any of those big nice systems. So, it's all about showing people what's practical to do. So,
I've tasted some pretty fine liquor made off of keg stills, so I can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've had decent liquor off them Weber stills,
Yeah.
It's just all about what you do with it, Like how can you swing it, How can you do your thing? So
man, I love them Viver Lombardi stills for what they are and what they cost. Especially if somebody's in a double pot still and they want a good stripping still.
Yeah,
that thing's freaking beat it up. It gets dents in it, whatever.
Right.
It is what it is.
They're great for somebody who's not sure. Like, man, I'm not sure if I want to do this, or my wife's not going to let me spend a whole lot of money to get involved. Yeah. But you're like, oh, I got this for $100. Like I spent $100 without her knowing, or it's just like I'm going to give it a shot, and then you upgrade after it. Everybody always upgrades after that.
Yeah, it always happens.
Do that still, or they go to a different still. But yeah, it's just something to play around with. Get involved.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But well, I'll tell you what, guys, you definitely got to come down, and if nothing else, put it on your list. If you don't do anything else while you're there, if you just stop by for 10 minutes, you got to come try this Sunshine thing, because it's an entirely different ordeal. The background of it is obviously extremely cool, being with Mike Stallings' background, Moonshine Mike, and he and I, we were pretty close, pretty tight, and we'd chat on the phone and we'd challenge each other. He'd come up with something, I'd come up with something. Mike was a true moonshiner in terms of the way that he did things, using sugar, various different types of sugar, various different waters he had on his property and stuff. And I'll never forget, he told me he said it's coming up on wintertime, or it was wintertime. He goes, I still got some sunflower seeds sitting out here in the bag. He goes, I think I'm going to use them. And the first time I heard it, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. You don't know what you don't know. And so he made that up, and he used some wheat and he used some oats, and he gave me a little sample of it. And it was pretty damn good. And kind of like Donnie Benton, Donnie I don't know if he does now or not, but he used to not grind his rye. Mike didn't grind his sunflowers. And I used to take, he'd modify my stuff and I'd modify his. So I started grinding the sunflowers a little bit, and that changed the flavor. And then
for sure,
I don't know why, but it just popped in there one day. I was like, you know what? I'm going to malt these damn things. And I've got a toaster oven out in the yard, an old pizza oven. I'm going to roast them. We're going to see if we can get them oils a little more rancio. And man, that was the trick as far as I was concerned. So it's a lot like a mezcal, a little bit like a smoky mezcal.
Nice.
So
nice.
Look forward to trying that. So you said this sometime this summer, Uncle Joey. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So sometime in between the festivals. So
before it gets too hot, maybe even before it gets too hot. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy, it gets hot in that distillery. I can tell you that. It's a whole.
Do you know of anybody else that uses sunflower seeds for sunflowers for that? I've never heard of such a thing. Is that
Somebody told me that there was another brand, and I looked for them and I couldn't find them. Somebody told me there was another brand somewhere down south that had done the sunflower thing. But the first I'd ever heard of it was when Mike did it. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm sure somewhere somebody has for sure done this.
Right.
I can't imagine that they wouldn't have. Now, whether anybody's ever malted them and roasted them before, I don't know, because it's kind of an interesting process. So instead of being like your corn malt or your rye or anything where you kind of dry it down and knock the roots off, you can't really do that with sunflower because there's no starch. So when that thing germinates, it's the whole inside of the plant itself is what you're really roasting, and then you're getting a little flavor out of the shell. It's a very different sort of process, without a doubt. And Tyler can verify this. We have about for every every 3 successes with malting sunflowers, we have just one just absolute shit show that molds all to hell and you can't do anything with. So
Hey, you gotta have the mess, man. You gotta
Yep.
have a mess in there somewhere. So
yeah. Well, and they definitely they seem to malt better when it's a little cooler outside, is what I'd say. They don't like the hot weather. They'll germinate quicker in the hot weather, but they'll mold real quick. But this over the wintertime, we've had real good success malting them and haven't really lost much there. So, but that's part of it, you know. If we're I made the argument when we got over there that I didn't want to have to mill my own grain, and the reason for that is that's another thing to break down. It's another thing to go wrong. Now, we milled a lot of the grain for the sunshines, but not for the whiskeys. We get that from Sugar Creek Malt Company. Caleb has an excellent facility here in Indiana, and he can do better milling than what I can. And let's face it, people who are coming to the distillery and getting drunk, they don't want to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning hungover listening to a damn hammer mill outside the door.
Right.
So that was my justification for this is, instead of doing milling for the whiskeys, what we'll do is we'll focus on handmade ingredients for the sunshines. So, and
you want to tell us about you got a book? I've heard about the book. Uncle Joey was talking about it earlier.
Yeah, I've got a few of them now. So I've done I don't know, years ago I did the my reenactment group Hell's Half Acre. We did the Popcorn Sutton Jam. This still whistles to wake the drunkards. Yeah, and the one that we're about to put another one on the 500 gallon. That's going to be even better. So it's a double whistle, so it'll be 2-tone. But I had written the book that I took down there. And I really wrote it for myself and my buddies originally, but I took it down there. I made a few copies and sold it down there, and then people kept asking for it. So we published that a few years ago, republished it as it were. It's the Alchemist Cabinet Volume 1 Philosophy.
Got a copy somewhere.
Yeah, and
it's around here.
It's sort of.
I see you got your reading glasses on.
sort of a little autobiographical, and then there's some method stuff in there, and it's all the stuff from when I was young and learning from my grandpa and my dad and all that stuff, and the things I learned on my own. And then a couple years ago, I did a second book that was more recipe centric, a little bit of history in there, that sort of stuff. And then, I've always been really interested in almanacs. I love almanacs, or you go back in history, what they used to call chapbooks, and in France, they had what they called the Bibliothèque Blue books. But these little books of just sort of useful information, whether they be astrology related to farming, what they would have considered sort of low level folk magic, that sort of stuff, plus useful articles, and every chance I get to look at any of the old books like that, I'll take a look at them, because it always learn something from them. But I got thinking, man, every industry pretty much used to have an almanac that they'd give away to their customers, or they'd sell to their customers, and it was related to what they did. So I thinking, I wonder if anybody has ever done a distiller's almanac, or if any of the almanacs have anything on distilling in them, because I thought that'd be cool to compile those articles into a volume or whatever. And I got looking, the harder I searched, the less I found. I couldn't find anything. I didn't even find a single article about the art of distillation going through the Old Farmer's Almanac archives or the Farmer's Almanac archives, which really surprised me. And even a lot of the old German almanacs didn't have anything on distillation, which surprised me. So I thought, well, I've been tracking distillation through moon phases and signs and everything for several years. I did that at Copper and Kings and Spirits of French Lick and all that stuff. And I could write something that was probably distilling centric based upon what I've sort of, observable phenomenon that I have experienced in the distilling industry. So that sort of created the idea. So 2024 was the first volume. 2025, which is available now digitally, is the second volume, and it's something I'm going to do every year. I'm learning now why the Old Farmer's Almanac and the Farmer's Almanac actually finish their shit 18 months ahead of time because of publishing. So for those of you who have bought the 2025 Almanac from the alchemistcabinet.com and haven't received the physical copy yet, here's an update for you. So we moved to a new publisher because Amazon publishing was slow as hell about everything. And people tended to want their almanacs signed, so they'd come to me first. I'd sign them, then send them out. So we've kept it that way for a long time. But we moved to this new publisher because Amazon was getting so bad. The new publisher has been good because they had to go through setup and everything. They can't just immediately print a book in an odd size because this year's volume is actually the size of like an old Farmer's Almanac, because I like that little chapbook style that you can hang up somewhere. So they got it all printed, 2 orders worth of them, because we wanted to have a bunch of physical copies on hand, because I know when people order something, they expect it to go out pretty quickly. So I like to have them on hand. So they managed to lose both orders in the mail, not one, both in the mail through USPS. So they are currently being reprinted and sent back out. So everybody who's ordered one so far, we knew that we were going to be running behind on this thing. When we offered it as, you could buy it, you'd get the physical copy, but you'd immediately have access to the digital download. That way you'd have access to all the information. The physical copies are coming. Right now, the physical copies aren't up for order on the website anymore because I'm waiting until I get these in to offer those again. But the digital one is available at the moment. So I do apologize for that. The cool thing is next year's almanac is about 3/4 of the way done. And that thing is going to the printer in July, and it is going in the mail one way or the other by October. So,
well, you learn a lot on the first go round. So that's what it's all about, no matter what it is.
It's a whole thing.
It always is.
I'm always playing around with something, like I need more projects, but I don't know. There's something cool about being able to document things. I think a lot of home distillers and a lot of professional distillers both are interested in a lot of the same things. And they tend to be either agricultural centric or even alchemy centric, even if people don't realize what alchemy is. And so having articles in there where you can read about things that are, they may not even be distillation related, but they're sort of in the same ballpark. And I think there's something kind of cool about a publication that caters to people like us, and so we get a lot of people do guest articles and stuff like that. And, the goal is that every 4th year, every leap year, we'll take the old issues and we'll compile those in sort of an omnibus and then reoffer them to where you can sort of buy them all in one go. I mean, the astrological information won't really help you anymore, but, all the articles will be there for you to check out.
Right.
So, but it's kind of the thing. I guess I started to look at that as, more than anything that I distill or any other project I work on, that almanac is sort of what I see as being something that could live on long after I'm gone. And it could be that one day somebody comes along and wants to take that over, and that'd be great. I'd love to see that thing live on for a while, because there's not people used to say moonshine was a dying art. Well, almanacs are a dying art. Somebody wants to sit down and track all the astrological information and all that stuff, or go through all the old folk magic grimoires. And, everybody in our families, we all had somebody in our family that did magic. They may not have realized that that's what they were doing, but that's what they were doing. I mean, my grandma, she did bibliomancy. That was magic. She didn't realize it. She'd wake up in the morning, she'd close her eyes, open her Bible, and point to a passage, open her eyes, and that's what she lived her day by, was that passage. That's a form of magic, little things, little helpful things. So,
well, I'm sure, me being a newbie and learning, I'm sure I'll get a lot of useful information out of your books, and I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I hope so. And that's what I like doing, that stuff. But, it's also what the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute's about, and even Distillers Talk, is to sort of have those open forums where people can get their questions answered to the best of my ability. Anyways, I mean, hell, I'm wrong most of the time. So
same. Fake it real well, and hope for the best. Usually it'll be all right, turn out all right.
It'll be fine. I tell people that all the time. I ain't got no dogma when it comes to distilling, because the one thing I can tell you guys is that I'm proof of it. I have yet to ever hire a single person that came to me and said, you know what, I went through a distilling class or distilling course at and not to point fingers at them specifically, but let's say Moonshine University, or I went and did the International Brewers and Distillers and this and that and the other. I'd much rather have somebody that doesn't have any of that old Seagram's dogma built up in them. Mm-hmm. Somebody learned at home. That's why I hired Tyler. He learned at home, and he watched my videos, and I'll have to tell that boy, you guys come up and watch him. Yeah, that's entertaining. That kid runs around that distillery like a chicken with his head cut off, man. I ain't got to tell him to mop or nothing. If there ain't nothing going on, he's got a damn mop in his hand. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Living a dream, you know, living a dream.
Yep. Always got a smile on his face. In there singing all the time, even when I'm pissed off about something, cussing about something. He's over there singing.
Yeah. The only time he ain't singing is when he's wondering where his track lamps and gaskets are, Sean. You piece of shit. Send Tyler his track lamps and gaskets.
Give Tyler a shit, Sean.
Fucking Sean.
That's right. That's the only two things I've heard him complain about, I think, are the gaskets that Sean didn't send. And then he always asks me every week, he's like, "Did you watch Moonshiners this week?" And then he starts in on it. So
yeah, I'm always like, hey man, it's TV, you know, it's TV, you know, it's just a TV show. It's like watching the Avengers.
It's,
you know?
it's definitely you say that more now at these last couple seasons than I think you ever have. They've really had to kind of stretch it and
entertainment. They got to keep the person, the common person coming back. And
absolutely.
I get it. So
you're not wrong. I will tell you this. So I've been real impressed by three people the past year or so here. Amanda, obviously, JJ's become one of my best friends in the world. I fucking love JJ. He's
JJ's a great fella. Love
JJ's awesome.
Yeah. Me and JJ had a fun night at Part in the Bottle.
Yeah. Well, I got
yards and having a great time. And I love JJ.
Yeah, he's
JJ.
He's a hell of a guy. He's a hell of a distiller. That's the other thing. He's a hell of a distiller.
Yeah,
and
he
then
is.
This last trip to Mount Vernon, Digger was there actually, and I actually had a pretty damn good time talking to him. And
Nice.
yeah, it's interesting when you see the sort of legal side of things line up with the historical side of things, line up with sort of the moonshine, background of things, all in one place. It's an interesting dichotomy to see and to listen to the way those lingos sort of intertwine and the information that's sort of flowing around and how people, sort of view things differently or do things a little differently. So, but yeah, as I had a chance to work with both Amanda and JJ both out at Mount Vernon a couple times now and really, really enjoyed that. So. And there's more books on the way, presuming that, listen, I can write a book. That ain't no problem. It's getting the damn thing is the fucking problem.
Right. Getting it published, getting it printed.
Getting it printed. Yep.
Yeah. I've got a little deal. I don't know. I may or may not follow through with this. I got a deal, a potential deal on the table from a publisher that might be 3 books, and we'll see what happens there. I don't know. I haven't made up my mind. I kind of like doing it on my own. But another book that's coming, and this may end up being part of the almanac. It'd be kind of interesting for people that are into this kind of stuff, but it's definitely a fiction book, but it's based on Indiana history in the early 1800s, and it's based on a traveling distiller who comes through the area, but he's he's sort of up against all kinds of adversity the early settlers here would be up against, and he's also a little bit of a practitioner when it comes to sort of Swedenborgian folk magic or powwow folk magic, cunning man magic, all those old things that the old timers were really into, and understanding herbs, botanicals, and their associations with planets and spirits and all that stuff. So I've been pretty heavy into that the past couple months here, writing on that where I can here and there. So it'll be a neat little thing, and I think I can sort of work some knowledge about the art of distillation into sort of lessons, in the book that might be kind of cool for people. So that's been another little project. Like I said, I need 15 more of them.
And with your podcast, you're distilling, you're a busy man writing the books.
Yeah. It stays busy for sure. The other, I've got another little project out there with, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Been working on some stuff with my buddy Eric Wolf out at Stolen Wolf. If you guys ain't ever had any Stolen Wolf, you make it out to Pennsylvania, you got to pick you up some two distilleries I highly recommend: Stolen Wolf and Liberty Pole. Both those distilleries are on the money as far as I'm concerned, and there's some great stuff really happening in Pennsylvania. But so Stolen Wolf is Eric and Aviana Wolf. They had teamed up with sort of a legend of the distilling industry, Dick Stoll, who was the last master distiller out at Michter's in Pennsylvania before he passed away a few years ago. And man, if people have a bias against column stills in general, now Eric's is a little bit different, but I'll tell you what, if you want proof that column stills can make some damn good whiskey, every bit as good as a pot still, a little different than a pot still, but every bit as good. That right there is the brand I'd tell you to go check out, because it'll blow your socks off. You'll be surprised, especially for rye whiskey with what they're doing. Whether it's the Rosen rye or the regular rye, they just did a sherry cask rye release that was, I mean, it's on top of the world as far as I'm concerned. So good stuff. But we've got a little historic project going with them. We started last year. We found this book, man. I can't remember the name of it. It's but what it was a book from the mid 1700s in Pennsylvania, and it was the accounts of this guy. He was a shoemaker and distiller, as one does. You know, you can't be one; you got to be both. A shoemaker
That's
and
right.
distiller.
Right.
Have a cover story.
Hans Frederick Gelbert or something like that. But there was, I guess, when the German American Society out there republished this account, they're going through that old account book, and that's really what it is. It's his accounts, people they sold stuff to, bought stuff from. But there was a pamphlet in there that he had gotten from somewhere that was sort of like a 3-page thing on the art of distillation, like how do you set up a profitable distillery. And in that 3 pages were the closest thing to actual historic mash bills, because there really, oftentimes there weren't mash bills until you get into the 1850s or so. But these were the closest things to historic mash bills I'd ever seen. And they were like an example, the one that we kind of riff off of is a bushel of rye, a bushel of wheat, a bushel of rye malt, and a peck of oats. Right. So you scale that up to 500 gallons. And since it's rye and we don't plan on calling it straight and we don't plan on calling it bottled and bond, there's a cool little rule in the TTB regs that let you do 2.5% by volume or weight of harmless flavoring or coloring. So this gave me the excuse to just fuck up Eric's still all the way. And we threw a bunch of dehydrated apples. His thumper is actually a little pot still is what it is. So it's got plates in the top of it, 3 plates. So we took dehydrated apples, shoved them in a bunch of cheesecloths, shoved them up in the thumper, ran those apples off through that thumper in that rye whiskey, and they held that whole run. Then we did one with raisins, and then we did one with raisins and apples both. And they're setting in new oak barrels, and then we got about 45 gallons. It's going to go out to the tasting room. Really, really cool stuff. Getting ready to go back out there in May with Paul Menta from Key West Rum. We're going to make some rum out there, and then me and Eric are going to see if we can fuck some rum up on top of it. So
got to go all the way.
That's right. Have I used figs in my mash yet? I have not used figs. I would love to if I could get my hands on them, for sure. I would absolutely love to. So go get me some Fig Newtons.
It's just figs.
So,
They couldn't make it into the mash. I'd eat them all. Like, oh man, Fig Newton. Fig Newton.
I feel you, man.
I
I can't be trusted with the sunshine mash because there's raisins in most of them, and I'll just be sitting there in that box eating handfuls of raisins.
All the raisins, like we don't have any raisins.
Yep, they're gone.
So it sounds like you really enjoy the experimentation side of what you're doing now. Like that's really sparks you. Like you really, what's next? You know what I mean? What are we gonna do next? What can we try? So. That part of it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's I think I've always had that in me, but it's been like I started at Spirits of French Lick, so I went from Copper and Kings. I've always been like the underdog, right? So Copper and Kings, a fucking brandy distillery. Oh wow, nice. Brandy distillery in the middle of bourbon country, right? So there's an underdog statement number one, and it was American brandy, but it was pure American brandy. Like we couldn't do anything to mess with it, right?
Right.
Then I go to Spirits of French Lick, which is bourbon, only 30, well, let's say it's an hour northwest of Louisville, Kentucky. So still in bourbon's backyard, but quote unquote on the wrong side of the river.
Yeah.
And that was when craft distilleries were still coming up. So I felt like when I went in there, like that's why everything was a little more, it wasn't straight line. I was messing with bourbon. I was doing alternative grains, alternative yeast and stuff, but it was all, we make straight whiskeys and we make, bottled and bond whiskeys, and we make cask strength, and nary will anything ever touch my liquor other than water and barrel. Right. But I did that for 9 years, and I won a lot of awards and a lot of acclaim from it. And I sort of feel like, well, I've been there and done that. And the stuff I did at home, I found, to be quite honest with you, I find bourbon a little bit fucking boring. And I just don't want to. I've done it. I don't want to.
Home distillation is exciting. It's because if you can dream it, you can do it. You know what I'm saying? Or you can at least fuck it up trying to do it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's exciting about it. That's what's so fun about it. There are no rules, and there's no rules on what you could do it and call it. It's just do you, man. That's what's so exciting about home distillation.
One of the coolest things ever. So because it is exciting, and you can get excited about things like, man, I can't wait till the Cisco rep comes by, right? Like, what's on the Cisco truck? What you got? What's new in the catalog? Tell me what you got. Give me something. But one of my old partners, my brother Barry Grover, another friend of mine who passed away unfortunately a couple years ago, just so happens to turn out that his daughter is our Cisco rep. So once a week I get a visit from her, and it's sort of like talking to her dad and getting the order ingredients at the same time. So everything in life sort of comes around.
Oh yeah.
So
what's your favorite experiment turn right now? What do you have going on now that's really making you're having fun with?
Oh, we did let me think here for a second. So one thing we did, real basic stuff. Y'all touching tips. Hey.
That's just Matt. That's where Matt and Sean is. They're all touching tips, and Matt's deer blind.
Yeah.
It's just the tip.
And we all got a lot to learn, Richard. It doesn't matter if you're a newbie or you're a seasoned vet. Still so much to learn.
Man, yes. I've messed up a lot of liquor in my time, but in terms of favorite thing right now, so I think Tyler might agree with this. There's two things I'm most passionate about are apple brandy and absinthe, and so that those are there on the list. I mentioned the 3 absinthes earlier. Those are things that I developed years ago here at the house that are true absinthes that I can't wait to get on the market. But it's like me and 5 other people care. But the one that I thought was really cool. So we had thought that all the stills would be online by, let's say, August or September. And so I had put in this huge grain order for, I never did drink no fucking pee.
Same. Same. I draw the line there.
Did see the video though. I did see the video. Yeah. I have done some alchemy with some pee.
Yeah, I ain't drinking no piss. At least not my own. Right. If we won't go there. But go ahead, keep going. Just going.
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's only 90% urine, Big Easy. It's okay. It's okay.
That's all good. It's all good.
But so we ordered all this grain. I mean, it was a lot of grain, and it was hot. We didn't have anywhere great to store it. It was sitting in the warehouse, and so I started thinking, man, I gotta get through this shit. And so you start coming up with, how are we going to use are you going to use all, God damn it, I can't stop laughing. That's funny.
He's stupid.
So how are we going to use all this?
Bring some to farm the bottle, Phil.
Right. So you start coming up with recipes, right? So now I've got I gotta come up with these sugar shines because I use this grain somewhere. My cooker's not online, my big still's not online, and I can't let this go to waste, right? It is too damn expensive to let it go to waste. So one of the things that happened was I got through the vast majority of that grain, but I had this pallet of rye malt sitting aside. I kept thinking, man, I have got to do something with that. And I could probably have made malted rye whiskey and figured out a way to get, 250 gallons worth of hot water onto the rye malt to get it to do what I needed to do. But I also had a bunch of sugar sitting there. So I kept telling Tyler, I was like, we're going to start on this rye project. I kept putting it off. And finally, one day, it's like something just broke in me. And so we started doing malted rye and sugar. And then in the thumper, we did sweet orange, bitter orange, lemon pill, cacao nibs, nutmeg, and Ceylon cinnamon, and we called it Rise and Shine, and it's fucking delicious.
Did you take the peels off the oranges, or did you
So
just whole orange?
we initially were doing orange peels, and same thing with all the citrus, but I started because we had so much just to get through. I started running out of orange peel and lemon peel, and you put in an order, and it's about like the books, right? And maybe it'll be here in a month if you're lucky. So I started going to my Cisco rep and being like, "Hey, how much a box of lemons? How much a box of oranges? Whatever, right?" And then just taking them, and I was just slicing them, throwing them in the dehydrator for about 2 days, and then throwing the whole thing in the thumper, and it worked out beautifully. You know, you get a little bitterness off of zest, but it's just enough bitterness to hold up in that particular concoction. So we did a lot of that and put it into new oak barrels. Now, some of these various spirits that we call, like, some of them, they're basically sugar shines, but some of them are what we call Black Forest spirits. Like the more involved ones are called Black Forest spirits, and that's what Rise and Shine is. So that turned out so well, we decided we'd do a couple more riffs on it because we had so much extra rye malt. So we did one that we threw some jasmine and chamomile in. And then we did another one where I was making some hickory syrup last year. You go out and get, shagbark hickory bark and boil it into a tea, and then, boil some sugar into it. So we started throwing some toasted hickory bark and some hickory syrup into the thumper. And man, that was, that might be the most Hoosier damn thing I've ever done in my life. And pretty happy with it. Some of those, the ones that went into the barrels, the Black Forest stuff, they're not going to mature like a true whiskey. I might let some of them ride a few years, but honestly, I think it's going to be more about balancing some of the barrel sugars with the existing spirit. So some of those might even come out of that barrel this summer. I'm not
taste them, quality control, and pull it when it tastes right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think that's also the beautiful thing about this opportunity is both the other places I had to sort of play into, the bourbon snobbery and all that stuff. And don't get me wrong, I still have those people, and I still love and respect those people that have supported me in that, and they'll come support me in this. But I've got a little more levity here to lean into the people that understand home distilling and that understand moonshine and understand, the storytelling aspect of it and what you're really trying to craft. So I can get away with doing some things a little differently here, I think, than what I could elsewise.
And that's the fun about it. And so, that's the fun.
And like you said, it's small batch. So if you mess it up, you're not messing up that much.
It's not that big a deal. You can always do something with it after it's messed up. So
absolutely,
we got to rerun the shit out of it. So
right.
Jason wants to know, have you ever used Elbon rye or Hazlitt rye?
I feel like maybe the Hazlitt rye at one point in time, but I'd have to go back and look at my records. If I did, it was at Spirits of French Lick. Ever used peated barley for like a single malt Scotch style liquor? Yes, I have. So as a matter of fact, right now this isn't peated, but it's Caleb at Sugar Creek makes some malts for us out of with alder and beech in his Sane house, which is the traditional way that they were making malt in Scandinavia. And so our American single malt we're making right now, tree bark ain't easy to fish out of a thumper. Tyler loves it when I throw shit in that thumper, man. He's all about it. He loves getting that shit out of there.
He needs a bigger port.
Oh man, he needs a
bigger
pump. That 2-inch pump ain't cutting it. He was one day he was pumping out of a barrel. Oh shit, this is funny. Because he don't complain neither. Like not until after the fact. Then he'll say something. I looked over and I saw him. He was struggling with something, but I was doing something. Went on going about what I was doing, and I come back out when he got done. I was like, "What were you doing over there with the bucket and the barrel?" And he goes, "You fucking cut the apples too big. The pump wouldn't pick them up." He goes, "I had to pick every fucking apple out of that barrel."
Trial by fire. By fire.
Yep.
It happens. Yeah, I stopped using because I started on a keg still, and had a little 7.5 gallon keg. I was using it as a thumper, and I put whole fruit in that. Apples same way, too big. Couldn't get them out, man. Sticking there trying to mash up them apples so I could just. Oh, it was terrible. And I never put whole fruit in that keg thumper again. It was always just liquid concentrates and everything after that. So.
We were playing around with with that 2.5% rule I told you about for flavoring and coloring on one of the American whiskeys the other day. And so we filled the gin basket on the 250 with apple slices, and nothing went wrong or anything, but it was just kind of interesting because even the Thumper doesn't do this. We got done with that run, went to open up that gin basket, and those apples had turned to straight. It was nothing but applesauce and skin is what it looked like. So it just absolutely ate them, which is great. It's all, it's all sitting in the barrel now. So we got all the extraction out of it that you could possibly get. Eric Wolf's dad, Jim, he's still claiming a year after running that first run of rye with the apples and the Thumper, he's still finding pieces of apples coming out, coming out of the Thumper.
So did you, when you were learning and distilling at home, did you like making brandies?
Oh yeah, that was the main thing that we did. So my family, they had distilled for a long time in Kentucky, and then my grandparents moved up here in the 40s to buy our family farm, which was a tobacco farm. So they raised tobacco and made moonshine, and that's how we paid for Christmas, paid property taxes and all that stuff. But there wasn't a lot of it wasn't like anything in depth like what we get into, right? It was like, well, basically the old time thing of what do you have? Well, everybody here in southern Indiana, especially in this region, it used to be the Black Forest where all the brandy distilleries were. They all had apple trees and pear trees in their yard, peach trees or whatever. But nobody, once grandma got her pie's worth of apples off the tree, they were done with them. So the fruit just falls and it rots. And of course, nobody wants to mow over that shit. And there's bees everywhere and everything else. So the vast majority of what we made growing up was apple brandy because I could get apples for, and I was the young one. Hey, neighbor says, go pick up the apples.
And it's awesome.
Yeah. I tell people I've been stung by every possible fucking stinging or biting insect in this state at this point from doing that over the years. But yeah, apple brandy has always probably been my sort of favorite, my passion, my go-to. Something about it. Not only just this having been the former apple brandy capital of the world for about 70 years is pretty cool. I didn't know that when I was younger, but I think apple brandy's got just enough. There's just enough of that characteristic somewhere between a traditional moonshine in terms of attitude with apple brandy, with true American style apple brandy, and with the sweetness of the oak that the bourbon gets and the balance of the tannins, the structure, etc. Apple brandy just has it sort of rides that line and sort of the same way that I always have between, the home distilling moonshining world and the legal distilling world. So it kind of fits the aesthetic, I guess.
I can only remember having one aged apple brandy and I wasn't a big fan of it. I really do like the clear apple brandies. I'd like to find an aged apple brandy that I like because I like aged liquor. I'm sure there's one out there that I would like, but what I've had I was not a fan of. And
the one I had that was made by Alan at Spirits was amazing.
See that I'd like to try a good apple brandy.
Yeah, that and I don't have anything bad to say about the company Spirits of French Lick. I'll tell you, if you can get the Old Clifty apple brandy, as long as it's the stuff that I blended, because I don't know who's doing what there now. I can't vouch for them now, but the Old Clifty I'm definitely real proud of that. And sort of jumping back on that Pete question from earlier too, there's an even better version that was called Palindrome that I barreled on my birthday a few years ago and bottled up. I think it was already 4 years old when it went into this barrel, and then I left it in this barrel for I think a year or 2 years. But I got an Islay Scotch barrel, a peated Scotch barrel, and put aged apple brandy in it, and called it Palindrome, and left it at 130 something proof. And that might be my favorite thing legally that I've ever made. It's just like having an apple brandy around a bonfire. So.
So if anybody's got a bottle of that and they want to share, hit up Still Talking.
Uncle Joey wants to try it.
I sure would.
Yeah, you'll be glad you did. So
private message me. I will gladly send you my address.
You ever done plum brandy Serbian style?
So I'm not sure what the Serbian style part of that would be.
Me either. Yeah. Could you elaborate a little bit more, Gordon?
Yeah. I've done Slivovitsia, and I've done I have done long ferment Slivovitz over the wintertime, and I've done apple brandy over the wintertime where you let it, you start fermenting late in the fall
Mhm.
and then let it set all winter and sort of finish up in the spring. And I love that stuff. Those are a little hard though. So those are things for like people like us that are real geeky about this shit. Like you start putting something in front of a consumer that's got a little bit of a VA to it, or a little Brettanomyces, horse blanket thing going on. The public doesn't quite know how to how to react to that shit. So,
Oh
but
yeah, for sure. They don't like what they don't know. You know what I'm saying? They
yeah,
don't like what they don't understand.
right, right.
So,
Yeah, that I don't know if you guys got to try that rum that JJ did that he purposefully infected, but
oh yes, I did.
I
Yeah,
fucking love it. I
that
love it.
was amazing.
It's so weird and funky and complex, and it's all the things that the average American consumer would be like, "What in the fuck is this?"
Yeah, or be like, I don't even understand. It just tastes like alcohol. Most people are like, oh, it just tastes like alcohol, and they move on. I
Right?
did a slow ferment on apple brandy over the winter, and it got an aceta infection. It grew a
Yeah,
big giant SCOBY inside. It was wild,
yeah.
and the flavor that came off of it was insane.
They will do some weird things. When I was a
Yeah, it will.
kid, we used to take we used to go down in Charlestown back before anybody used to charge for used bourbon barrels. There used to be a place down in Charlestown, Indiana. You go pick up as many barrels as you fucking wanted. They didn't care. You didn't charge you for them. But we would take them and we would actually dig holes in the lower shed of the tobacco barn and actually bury the barrel up to within about 6 inches of the rim so it could ferment during the wintertime. Well, those barrels, they never come out of the ground. So,
Right.
we clean them as best you could, but they're in contact with the ground. So they're getting all kinds of,
Yeah.
mold growing in the wood and everything else. And so that was in the fall of the year. That's where, the apples would go and they'd sit there until they got done. And
Yeah.
sometimes they'd sit there long after they were done because they're in the ground. They're not really going to go bad. But that was some of the funkiest stuff I ever remember making. And it was also, probably nostalgia, probably some of the best stuff that I ever had was from that. Yeah. And it was also on a hillside. So every time it rained, the water had to have been running past those barrels, coming in contact with the wood,
Right.
everything else. So, but yeah, that was cool stuff. It was, it would always start off as taking a machete and sort of chopping the apples up and throwing them in there, and then, and then sort of late in the year it sort of became fuck it, just toss the whole
Just
toss
toss
the whole thing in there.
Yeah, it'll ride. It'll break down. It'll be all right.
It'd be okay.
That's cool. Barrels in the ground. I like old school traditional rum style.
Yeah,
just put it in there, ferment whatever you can, whatever's next. Let's get it. So
that's what I always tell people about these sort of traditional styles. And you guys know this too. I mean, listen, if you grew up with actual white corn whiskey that was actually converted, then that's what you like. That's what you're familiar with. But the vast majority of people, if you were to put a true white corn whiskey in front of them versus a white sugar shine made with corn, most of them are going to pick that sugar shine 9 times out of 10 because they don't know what that corn actually tastes like. They don't understand that profile. It doesn't hit them the same way.
What, in your opinion, what's your most favorite apple? There's so many different varieties of apple. I want to get into the apple brandy making myself, but my question is, there's so many different kinds. Would it be a good thing to mix a bunch of apples, or one kind of apple, or do you have a particular kind that you really enjoy?
Yeah. So typically the method here in the Black Forest was kind of the same as what it was in Normandy. So people were really, there were a lot of Swedenborgians here. There were a lot of Moravians, a lot of these orders that sort of didn't believe in grafting apple trees and having pure varieties. So it was kind of looked at as faux pas. Like to graft an apple tree was sort of like spitting in God's face and saying that you could do it better. So they would oftentimes, much like Johnny Appleseed, they'd get seeds and they would just grow trees. So each of the 6 counties around 1855 had upwards of 100,000 apple trees per county. And every one of those apple trees was different, which is what made the brandy so good because it was so complex. In terms of heirlooms, probably Northern Spy is probably my favorite of the heirlooms. Also, one that gets overlooked that, man, I bet if you guys look around this summer, you'll find these everywhere when you start looking. Little green apple called yellow transfer. Turley wine saps are good too, Tyler, but they're fucking expensive. They're crazy expensive around here because everybody knows what they are. They're hard to come by and they're crazy expensive. That was an actual distilling apple, by the way. But there's a little green apple comes on in June, July, maybe the very beginning of August called yellow transparent. Of its own accord, it's not terribly interesting when it's distilled, but it makes a fantastic base if you can get some other varieties of apples. And what I do is I'll distill it of its own accord, set it aside, and then distill the other varieties and then blend them either as a white spirit or mature them separately and then blend them. And those trees put on like crazy. So whoever has them in their yard, be glad to get rid of them to you for the price of being stung by whatever's around that damn tree. Other than that, I'm not real picky. Now, when it comes to the commercial side of things, making apple brandy on scale is it's tricky because you can't, there's not a ton of damn good distilling apples out there. You know, you could probably fit the entirety of what's out there in terms of what is quote unquote ideal for distilling in the state of Indiana would probably maybe be one tanker truckload of juice, right? It's pretty rare to come across that many of those old apples. So you sort of get limited to what you can get. And the one thing I've learned over the years, I learned this at Copper and Kings, and I've held on to it over the years. The one culinary apple that really does make decent brandy, and you don't have to just use this, you can use other varieties with it, but Golden Delicious seems to be the one that distills the best out of all of them. It holds up the best. It's got some structure to it. It's got a little tannin to it. It's got a little aroma to it. It ain't nothing to write home about, but it'll make decent brandy. The ones that you would think would make good stuff, and I know there'll be somebody out there argue this with me, but I have yet to see it. Things like Honeycrisp, they're just like a ball of water. There's nothing to it. They're good eating apples. And they do have the other use for them is dehydrate them bad boys and put those in a gin basket or put them in a maceration and redistill them, or dehydrate them and use them as sort of a maturation element in the finished apple brandy. They work great for that. But in terms of fermentation and distillation, there's not much to them. And a lot of the newer apples are a lot like that. They don't have much to them. They'll make alcohol, but
they're bred to taste good and be, visually appealing.
Yep. That's pretty much it.
It's not so much, it's about the consumer eating that apple, and so it's understandable.
I'll tell you another little trick, a commodity trick that you guys might or might not be interested in. The big green table grapes, Thompson seedless that you see at the store. Mm-hmm. That's also what they make your yellow raisins out of. But that actually makes much like the yellow transparent apple, that makes a fantastic base brandy. It's one note all the way through. But all of your Christian Brothers brandy before it's sweetened and destroyed and all that shit, that's what it is Thompson seedless. And the vast majority of your quote unquote, I can't drop any names here, but it's pretty obvious. But your mid-sized brandy producers in the United States that are doing any amount of blending, I can guarantee you that at least 51% of their blends are Thompson seedless.
Okay, it's great base.
Yep. We used to joke that we were getting the equivalent of the bottled and bond version of Christian Brothers is what it was. It was Christian Brothers Black Label. That's what it was. So we'd buy the barrels that Christian Brothers thought were overaged.
Nice. So, besides the, when the distillery opens, the hotel, we're definitely gonna have to hit out there. Do you have anything that you're really excited, new that you're working on, as we wind down the show?
Yeah. So I did. Let's see. We're doing the American single malt with the Alder and Beach Smoke, which I mentioned. We just finished up some. Basically, it's a corn-based American whiskey, is what it is. but it is true to what my grandfather was making, what my papa was making years ago. And so I've always had ideas for certain things. I guess the best way to say it is I never played all my best cards when I was at the other two places because I didn't own anything. There's a lesson to be learned there for distillery owners who want to keep distillers. Make sure that you're investing your distiller and your company, especially if they know what they're doing, and make sure that they're appreciated for what they're doing, or they're going to go elsewhere if they have a chance. So I always held on to a few things. And one of the things was this really, really simple base recipe that was my papa's. And I always wanted to name something after him. I held on to a lot of my best names and made sure that nobody got that intellectual property. So I just got done making his whiskey, which is literally going to be called W.P. Wilson, William Penn Wilson whiskey. So I'm real excited about that. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing overly complex. It'll just be a general kind of sipping whiskey. But it's cool to be able to pay tribute to his name, and be able to do something basic sometimes like that.
For sure.
Yeah, I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. It makes up for not that people don't love it, but it makes up for having to take some of the sunshine and dump cinnamon flavoring in it,
Well, and it's kind of neat that you're paying, you have roots in it and you're paying homage to some of those roots. So that's, to me, that's, that's when you get into, there's more to it than just making liquor. You know what I mean? It's paying tribute and where you're from and where they've been and everything else that goes into it. So that's awesome.
Now, two of the other coolest things I've gotten to do, I'll give you a couple more things here you guys might find interesting. I'll keep it real short for you, but last November went back to Mount Vernon again. Thanks to Steve Bayshore, the director out there at the distillery, and him putting his faith in me and just being a great friend in general, as well as a great leader out there at that distillery. And make no mistake, guys, I know when people say Mount Vernon, people think historic distillery and a lot of people think novelty, but I'll tell you guys right now that distillery under the leadership of Bayshore has become a world-class distillery. But he asked me to write him a 4-grain mash bill, an American whiskey mash bill for the 250th coming up. And so I got to write that mash bill. Not only that, he used the Elise corn that I bred, which means that my corn actually got milled in George Washington's mill, which is, to me, is just awesome.
Yeah. That's pretty cool right there.
And then got to go out and, sort of direct mashing in and distilling, and got to do that with Paul Menta and Amanda and Eric Wolf and Aiden Pemberton and JJ and Mark Meltonville and some of these people that are some of my best friends in the world and super talented. And of course, like everything else I do, I had to Hoosier it up. It's not really a 4-grain. It's kind of a 6-grain. So it's 3 grains and then the same 3 grains but malted. So it's pretty interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. I thought that turned out well. And then this past April, I'd got to go out there. I think it was April. We started. Steve had talked to me for years about doing an apple brandy with him. And so he worked with a cidery out there, and he got a hold of a I can't remember the name of it. It was a type of russet apple cider. And then he also got a hold of some Pommeau, which is, it's made from a French dessert apple. The name escapes me right now, but they press the juice and then they take brandy and they fortify it. Well, this was all extra stuff they had. So we mixed them together and we ran those off, got a little doubling run done. And then they finished up stripping it last year. So I just got back this past week from finishing out that project. I told Steve, I said, that's how you know we can really mess something up when it takes us a year to finish out a project. But just getting to go out there and do that stuff is awesome. And then be headed out to Stolen Wolf to work on this Wolf and Wilson project again in May. Like I said, Paul Menta is going to be out there. We're running some trials for some potential rum down the road at Mount Vernon, but also they're laying down some barrels of rum for the 250th out in Pennsylvania. And then after we get Paul's version done, then we're going to take those same source materials, those same raw materials, and sort of put our spin on it. I think what's going to happen is we're going to take some turbinado sugar, and then we're going to take some sorghum flour, and then a handful of those 4 grains from that historic mash bill I told you about, and throw that in there. And it won't really be a rum. It'll be DSS, but it'll be a good project.
That sounds wild right there.
Yep. Looking forward to it. And that's
Yeah.
another guy you guys should check out too, Paul Menta. He's a damn good guy, guys. He's Key West rum distillery. Dude does salt cured barrels and makes some beautiful rum. I'm not a rum guy, but his rum fits the bill, buddy.
I'll try it all.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
I'll try it all. I'll try it all.
That's why me and Easy get along so well.
Like, yeah, give it here. I'll try it. You know, I'll
He
try
hands it to me.
Right?
Unless it's coffee, I won't try it. I draw the line at coffee. I just want to know I'm not going to waste it. I'm not going to like it, so I'm not going to try it. I'll be like, no, I'm good. What else you got?
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I don't know. I like coffee pretty well, but we're gonna do
we like what we like. So
yeah, we're actually going to do a coffee ferment here shortly. My friends at Stave and Bean, Corey Welch and John Waddell, who also works at Peerless Distillery, they got a really good coffee brand, and I've made some stuff out of their coffee before, and we're going to do that again. And maybe we'll do a coffee liqueur. I know we're doing a chocolate liqueur because I've already prototyped it, and pretty happy with that. We got a hold of some colonial era type chocolate is what they called it. Mars Candy Company came out with it a few years ago, and
nice.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. So
Oh yeah, sounds like you stay busy, Alan.
yeah, man. Yeah, I do. But you know what? Let me just say this last thing, and we'll wrap this up real quick. I do what I do because I surround myself with good people who care about me and care about themselves and care about the people that they love in this world, and they're passionate. You got to surround yourself with other passionate people, or this shit don't work. It don't work. I couldn't do this without my wife or people like Tyler, or, many of the names I've mentioned here tonight, all my friends out there, and the people that support the things I do. I don't, I'm not making any money off If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything, or One Piece at a Time, or Distillers Talk. The Almanac and the books are really the only place I try to make a little bit of money at, because I feel like I gotta have, I can't just give you a book, I gotta have something.
Right.
Something for sure.
But I'm selfish too, though, in that I do a lot of this stuff for myself because I just want to do it. It's
and
just
you enjoy it. Do what you enjoy.
Well, I can say from people like me that are very new into this, I appreciate someone like you that's out there that has the wealth of knowledge that you have, and I probably won't even have near the questions that you could answer, but you definitely are someone who is there and have a lot of knowledge to help new people and probably veteran people as well. You could probably teach a lot of people a lot of things.
Yeah, man. I've always got an open ear to listen to. Paul's got me all tore up on this salt cured barrel thing. Now that I've tasted that damn rum,
right?
I don't know why, but I done been on Amazon, bought me a couple pounds of sea salt. So
yeah, we know why. So that's what it's all about. Just
packing
keep
a barrel full. So what do you got to do? Just pack this barrel full of salt? That's crazy. Well, that's a whole other episode. We'll deal with this another time.
Yeah.
Well, get with Uncle Joey. We'll have you back on soon. We'll talk about your salt barrel and adventures. So, anyways, Alan, man, we really appreciate you giving us your Monday night and sitting down and giving us the honor to listen to you speak, man. It's always a pleasure. So, and we're definitely going to make it out when you're fully open. We're going to come out, at least spend a night at the hotel and get blasted. Have a good time. So.
Well, I look forward to it, guys. I look forward to it. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming on, Alan.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. And all I got to say is, Sean, send Tyler his gas because you piece of shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Y'all have a great night. Listen to us on, anywhere it streams pretty much. So
next week we've got Vaughn Davis, Schoolhouse Farms, 1862.
Nice. And we're going to let Vaughn talk so he can listen, all right? We all can hear what he's got to say. So we love all y'all.
Nobody else on but Vaughn.
Have a good night.
Later.